Hey guys, what's going on? Today I'll be doing Mending Wall by Robert Frost. I'll be analyzing it and explaining it stanza by stanza in detail. So if you're interested, keep watching. Now the first thing that I want to talk to you about is just generally about Mending Wall and what the poem is about. So it was published in 1914, and in modern literature it is considered as one of the most analyzed poems. Yes, even though it's only about walls, but it has a deeper meaning. So in the poem, the poet is a New England farmer, so this is like the location, who walks along with his neighbor in the spring season to repair, the stone wall that falls between their two farms. It's very important to know that both both characters, and speaker and the neighbor, repair the wall in spring, and both do not, trespass to each other's land. So as they repair it, they are on their own land, and they just keep repairing it, from each side. So as they're doing that, the narrator or the speaker, he asks the neighbor, why do we need a wall? And he responds by saying he doesn't love the wall, but good fences make good neighbors. And this is a very old saying that has been going on for a lot of years. So this poem analyzes like the relationships between humans and how important is privacy. So the reader analyzes the search for a conclusion, and he's unable to find, and the quest is very much thrilling in terms of understanding why are we so obsessed about a wall that separates two guys or two persons, and why is this poem extremely important to to English literature and just literature in general, to Robert Frost. And he's of course one of the most successful writers, poets ever. But why this poem, right? So I'll start off by from the beginning. So from lines 1 to 9, he's saying that there's something mysterious in the nature, that it doesn't like walls, and they keep getting destroyed. The frost and the hunters keep destroying it. And he says this in the poem. He says, something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen ground swell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun. So he literally says that walls aren't really wanted by by nature. So there's always something that destroys them and keeps gaps that people can't pass. Is this a message from nature that we shouldn't be having any boundaries between one another? Maybe borders shouldn't be there, and we should just be allowed to live anywhere that we want. So he's saying that sometimes the wall is damaged by careless hunters who's pursuing to shoot rabbits, and they just miss and then hit the wall or something like that. But anyway, the walls are destroyed. Then the next part from line 9 all the way up to line 22, he's saying, the narrator, the speaker, he's saying that he just doesn't understand what is the point of this. He keeps questioning the point of building a wall around separating these two, himself and the neighbor. He keeps asking himself that question, and the narrator asks the neighbor to go beyond the hill and find out, after all, who creates these gaps about that are filled in the walls. Why are these gaps being created? So one day, both of them, they decide to walk along the wall, and now they start seeing that the stones are scattered on the ground, and they see that some stones are shaped like bread loaves, while a few of them are round in shape. All right, so because of their mysterious shape, they are having a hard time finding their previous position and fixing them back in the wall. And seeing the unusual shape, he's thinking, the narrator, the speaker, that he's saying that there's some kind of a magic trick to place the stones back on the wall. So he's just thinking of doing that. He's being ironic. He's being though all the process has become super hard in terms of putting back the wall, the little bits and bobs of the walls back into the wall itself. It's becoming very difficult for both of them. It's like an outdoor kind of game, and they're struggling with it because and they're competing as if they're opponents, and that's how he imagines it. The next thing from lines 22 to 36, he tries to tell, like the author or the speaker in this sense tries to tell the neighbor that, hey, listen, we don't need walls. Like, why do we even have to have a wall? And he says he only has pine trees, and himself he only has an apple. And why do we need to separate these, properties of nature between us? Why do we need a wall to separate these things? And he's saying that there are no way that your apple trees will pass, my apple trees will go to the neighbor's pine cones. It's impossible because trees are fixated, they don't move. So, the narrator tries to make his neighbor understand that there's no need of a wall, but his neighbor, is very much close-minded and stubborn, stone-headed savage, and he's believing in this old saying that I mentioned about that good fences make good neighbors, and he's abiding by that very, law or quote or line. So the last lines from 37 to the end, throughout the entire poem, the narrator wants to put his notion into his neighbor's mind. He's trying to convince the neighbor that, hey, we don't need a wall. So the kind of imagination he makes to convince his neighbor about the existence of the wall sometimes also make us think twice about the poet himself, Robert Frost. And this is why this poem is important, because we try to understand, the poet's life through this poem. Let's, for instance, think that where the narrator tells the neighbor that there's something like non-human, such as elves that come and break the walls. He's saying that some supernatural element, or just elves that don't exist, come and break the walls when they're not there. So we all know that elves are, very tiny in size, and they're supernatural beings, and they can only be seen in mythological stories as well as folklore. So immediately when the narrator changes his opinion and feels that it's not the work of elves, rather some kind of power in nature, we start to understand that Robert Frost is now making sense. So what did he really try to tell us in terms of, imagining and putting, saying that elves have destroyed the wall or some supernatural element? So the narrator is irritated to see his neighbor firmly holding a stone and giving a look of an ancient Stone Age man. Maybe they're different, we don't know their ages. We don't know the speaker's age and the neighbor's age. So maybe the neighbor is way older because he thinks in the sense that this is, a saying that he should abide by all time's sake. And the narrator feels that the neighbor is way too ignorant to be convinced, and he always wants to be stuck and follow his father's words. And this is the message of the poem. And it's very important, in all traditions and cultures, we know this, that this path that our parents have followed sometimes isn't the right path for us because of the change in life and attitude and style and evolving and technology, and everything is changing. So the way their parents raised them shouldn't be the way that they raise us. So this is, in my opinion, the message of the poem, that some people just always choose to live the same way that their parents have, and some others find their own ways in life. And this is, I think, the main difference between the poet or the speaker in this sense and his neighbor. So in terms of the poem in general, I believe that this poem is very important, and it's a target when it comes to Robert Frost. Whether you're doing ordinary or higher level, you should definitely, if you're doing higher, definitely include this poem and study it to use it in your essays. This is my personal opinion, but I totally believe that this is something that you should be focused on. And if you're talking about ordinary, it is there's a high chance of it coming up in any exam in any year. So this is something that I would never miss for the world. Anyway, guys, I hope I made sense in making you understand this poem, and where I the idea that I have in my opinion about explaining it. In case you have any questions, please do not hesitate to drop them down below, or just email me or something. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.